Well, welcome back, you guys, to the Cerebral Palsy and Fitness podcast. I have here Chris Mitchell. He's a self-confidence coach specializing in the disability community, and he's going to share a bit about his experiences and how he got into coaching and how he himself became who he is today. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much for having me this evening.
Definitely, I'm beyond excited and thrilled to have you on. And I've never really had a self confidence coach that specializes in disabilities. So tell me a little bit about what kind of got you into this.
Well, I've looked back upon my life because everyone does this at a certain point in their life, thinking what they wanted to do when they were in high school and where they are today. And I realized a couple of things. The things that I've achieved in my life, I was able to do because I had the self confidence to do it. And the things I have not achieved in my life was because I did not have the self confidence to do them. And when I realized that, I realized the most important thing, if you want to succeed in life, is not goal setting, is not vision boards or anything else people tell you. Those are important things. But the most important is to have self confidence. Because if you do not have self confidence in yourself and your abilities, goal setting and vision boards, if they work, will work to some extent, but you will be limiting your success if you are not confident in who you are and what you can become and do with your life.
Did you, when you were, as you were growing up and getting older, did you face struggles becoming confident in yourself?
Yes, I was born with cataracts, so I'm legally blind. So I've been visually disabled all my life, and I was diagnosed with ADHD later on in my life and a incomplete spinal cord injury in my mid 30s. And yeah,
Wow.
I struggle with self confidence because back in my time, I think it's better today. In some ways, I do. I got a lot of picked on. I got picked on a lot in school because of my disabilities and because I would react, and the other kids got me to react, which got me into trouble. So that did tear up
Mhm.
my self confidence being in the principal's office every single day. And I also was the son of a verbally abusive, functioning alcoholic father, which did not help
Wow.
my self confidence either. So
Can
yeah,
imagine.
I struggled with self confidence pretty much most of my life growing up.
And then, and then, when did you decide? When did you tell yourself, you know what? I want to make not just a change for myself, but for others to do better than who they are.
Well, there's two answers to that question. When I was in ninth grade, I was invited to get education elsewhere, which is a nice, polite way of saying I got expelled from high school. And I wound up into a special program for kids with behavior problems. And we had a wonderful teacher. Her name was Mrs. Lyons. And whenever any of us acted out in class, she would have this, I call it her mantra that she would say. And she would say it repeatedly to de escalate the situation. She would say, I like you. I don't like your behavior. I like you.
Mhm.
I don't like your behavior. She would repeat that until the situation de escalated. And that was the first time in my life someone told me my behavior, which was not the greatest, was not my entire identity. Before, when I
Right.
misbehaved, my parents, who were well meaning, but they did not know how to raise a kid with ADHD and behavior issues, would always make me think that my behavior identified who I was, which made me believe I needed to behave that way because that's who I was. So Mrs. Lyons changed that thought process in me, and that was the beginning of me turning around. As I reached the age that I'm at now, or maybe a few years ago, and look back upon my life, I realized, like I mentioned earlier, that self confidence has helped me achieve things, and lack of self confidence has prevented me from achieving things. And I don't want anybody in the disabled community in particular, but in any community, to get to a point in life that I'm at. Because I'm no longer, a college age kid, and look back at their life and realize they did not do as much as they wanted to in their life because of self confidence. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through in my adult years. And I want to help people discover, develop, and grow their self confidence so they can look back at their life when they get older and be happy with everything that they accomplished and probably accomplish more than they even set out to in their adulthood.
I know a lot of kids that I used to work with and see and they would struggle with their mental health and then self-esteem issues. And I work with a lot of middle school kids. Um and a lot of the middle school kids I used to work with were kids that have, a lot of anger issues, a lot of issues with their body image. You know how it is nowadays in middle school. These kids wear these big, they try to cover, what they wear and how they look like, and they don't want to be judged by others. And so, that's one of the things too is you having that support system. Miss Lyons, she was your support system to help you get through what you dealt with as far as trying to build that confidence. And it's so important nowadays, whether you are disabled or not, to have that positive role model in your life.
Yes, so, support systems are very important. That's one thing I talked about in my upcoming book, Success Starts with Self Confidence. Having a good support system, because no one creates success in their life by themselves. I mean, if you think about it, part of the reason I'm successful, I've written a book. And for me to write that book, there were teachers who taught me how to read and how to spell. If it was not for them, I could not have written that book. So everything we do in life that we succeed at, we don't do by ourselves. I know some people like to say, I was a self-made success. No, you weren't. You
Right.
had people who encouraged you from your
Right.
childhood all the way up to create that success. And yes, middle school was the worst. Back in my day, middle school was seventh and eighth grade, not sixth, seventh, and eighth, was the worst 2 years of my life. I would not want to relive being 13 and 14 again for any amount of money. And I can only imagine it's worse today with the kids that are on social media and
Oh
cyberbullying.
yeah.
So I
Mhm.
I am grateful I grew up when I did before social media. And uh, yeah, I would not want to go through middle school again. That was the hardest 2 years of my life. All the changes going on in my body and in school and education and everything else, I would not do it again.
Now, I can say this: social media can be good and it can be bad at time. It can be bad at times, but it really depends on what the environment is for that child. If you're growing up with all social media stuck on the tablet, doing nothing but just whatever, then obviously it's going to be negative. But if you're using it in a constructive way, like what we're doing, we're trying to educate people, then that's different.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Social media can be good or bad. I'm not a fan of social media for various reasons, not just because of, bullying on it. People, I think, get behind the screen and they become the worst version of themselves and will do it
Mhm.
things they would never do or say in person, or at least most of them wouldn't do or say. And I hate the idea that you get on social media and before you know it, you spent 3 hours on social media and you ask, what did I accomplish? Which is nothing.
Right.
So, and then, of course, well, look what that person's doing. Now I feel like I got to compete with them. I'm depressed because they went to Disneyland and I didn't go to Disneyland. So I'm not a big fan of social media,
Right.
but I do understand there's some benefits to it. Like for people in the disabled community, there are some
Oh
wonderful
yeah.
groups on social media you can get involved in and connect with others in your community from all over the country or the world, which gives you support when you meet like minded people who are facing the same
Mhm.
struggles that you are. So that's the good aspect of it, but there's a lot of bad out there too.
I mean, in regards to social media, like online dating, for example, someone who has a disability might not be confident enough to face someone face to face at first. So they see social media, they see video chatting as a way of comfort to kind of start that first step of this is who I am, and eventually, I'll open up and you can see, more of who I am in person, and it's a way to kind of build that relationship, between individuals before you decide to be like, hey, you know what? If this works out, I think I might decide to show out a little more, of
Right.
myself.
Right. Yeah. I'm coming up to, excuse me one second. Excuse me. 21 years of marriage, June of 2024. And I started
Congratulations.
dating. Well, thank you. She has not killed me and I have not killed her yet. So that's a good thing. I drive her up a wall because my ADHD at times I drive her bonkers. But anyway, I started dating. I did exactly what you said. I got onto a dating service and we connected through online dating first, and then we met in person, and that was more comfortable for me because of my at that time I was just visually impaired and I was a little confident about having a white cane, and I had been rejected by girls because of my disability, and I learned something from all of
Same
this.
here.
Are you there?
Oh, same here. Like,
Oh, okay, yeah. And so,
yeah.
I did meet my wife, Kimberly. We went dating, and she had no problem with the white cane. And I discovered there's a benefit to that because while we were dating, I got engaged, and that's when I had my ischemic stroke to my spinal cord, which is an incomplete spinal cord injury. And I never had the fear that she was going to run away from me because of that. Because I hear so many stories in my community that somebody becomes disabled like that from an accident or injury, and their girlfriend or boyfriend just they're gone and all. And
Yeah.
I realized my disability of my vision helped me find the right woman who would be by my side through whatever life I was going to throw at us. Because as all of us age, we're going to have challenges. We're going to join the disabled community at some point or another, and you want someone who's going to be there with you and not split when things get bad.
If there's one thing that I feel that really destroys a person's confidence, especially with ourselves, like in the disability community, it's when somebody absolutely says, you should date somebody of the same disability or in the same community. Like they don't think that somebody who's disabled doesn't have a chance as somebody who's able-bodied, but really it's all about education.
Yeah, my wife, when we first met, did not have any disabilities, and depending on what you consider a disability, she may be in the community or not. But she does have a placard now, so we both have a placard. I would always joke to people, "My wife married me for my placard." So, um,
Yeah, for free parking, right?
yeah, great parking spot. But yeah, um, if you want to date somebody and be with somebody in the disabled community and you're disabled, hey, that's great. No judgment here. But if you want to date and marry somebody outside of the community who is not disabled, hey, go for it. I mean, because the real thing is, and a lot of people get this wrong. I'm no dating expert. I haven't dated in 20 years. I better not be because I'm married. Uh, the thing is, looks for change over time, health for change over time. But what normally stays consistent, unless something horrific happens like a TBI or a dementia, a person's personality does not change much during a relationship. Sometimes it even grows and gets better. And you want to find somebody who's caring and compassionate. Don't worry that much about looks. Don't worry that much about income or anything else. You want to find somebody who's compassionate, and the people both in the disabled community and outside the disabled community who are compassionate people, and that's who you want in your life in a relationship, or even
Right.
in friendships. You want people who are compassionate and supportive, and that will help you with your self-confidence in life.
What are some of the topics you focus on in your book that people can relate to?
Well, one of the first things I talk about is self acceptance, because before you can build self confidence, you have to accept yourself for who you are. And that means everything, your disability, how it happened, all of that. There's a beautiful poem by Virginia Satir, I believe I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, called I Am Me. And she wrote this, she was a psychiatrist, psychologist, or counselor. I can't remember which. But back in the early 1900s, she wrote this poem to a girl, a teenager. I think it was one of her clients or patients or whatever, who was having a lot of questions about who she was. And she, in that poem, it says everything. And I'm paraphrasing here. Everything about me is me. I own it. And any part about me I do not like, I can discard it and replace with something better. Now, you may not be able to discard your disability, but if you are a type of person who knows you're losing friends because of the fact that you're always depressed and negative, You can change that about yourself. Just like Mrs. Lyons said to me, I like you. I don't like your behavior. Our behavior can be changed. We can change that ourselves. So I talk a
Right.
lot about self acceptance and self care in the book. It's an important thing to do. Take some self care. Check in with yourself. Find out what's going on, what's going right, what's going wrong. Make changes that are necessary. And if you need help, there's no shame in admitting you need help by getting yourself a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, or a coach. Any of those to help you along your way. I also talk about developing a good support system. I like calling it pruning the garden of friends. Because of the bad influences, you got to prune those weeds out of your life, because you only want people who are going to be supportive and encouraging around you. I also talk about something called Bob the Bouncer. Bob the Bouncer is a great thing. We hear so much in our life negative in the world about how hard it is to be disabled, the discrimination, all those other things. And I'm not saying they're not real, they are. But we hear so much about that. When somebody tells us something good about ourselves, Bob the Bouncer stops that from coming in, because that's not what we normally hear. That's not our normal narrative that we're exposed to. So I talk about, you got to fire Bob the Bouncer and start letting the positive in, or maybe retrain him to keep the negative out and the positive in, because what we believe in our mind becomes our reality. And we need to make sure we're putting stuff in our mind that's going to help build our self-confidence and not tear it down.
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I constantly hear, as well as I don't know how you feel about this, but do you ever feel like you get this notion of like they tell you, "Oh, you're inspirational," and you ask yourself, "How am I inspirational if I'm doing everyday things, everyday normal things, walking out the door, uh, cleaning the house, living, paying bills, working a job, it's like, oh, but you're inspirational, but hey, I'm just doing an everyday thing, you know?
Yeah, I've heard people talk about this, and some people refer to it, and I'm hopefully not get beeped for this, but inspirational porn, some people call it that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I I I I don't let that stuff get to me. I mean, I have other things to worry about in my life than how other people see me. I know some people it's very frustrating. I do respect that and I get that. But I look at it this way: if I do something, no matter what it is, if that inspires somebody else in the disabled community to do more with their life. Let's say I've taught myself how to walk again after my incomplete spinal cord injury, 7 years after my insurance company stopped paying for outpatient therapy, and I had to stop outpatient
Wow.
therapy. So if that inspires somebody else who's disabled to say, if he can do that, I'm going to try to do the same. Hey, I don't care what you call it inspirational porn. I'm inspiring somebody else's life to
Yeah.
get better.
Right.
And if I inspire somebody outside of the community who says, if he can do all these things and he's physically disabled, I have no reason to sit on my butt all day watching TV and doing nothing with my life. If that inspires someone, hey, that's why I'm here. I want to make people's lives better, and also, I really, it does not I understand it bothers some people. It does not bother me that much, because I look at it this way: that is that person's opinion. I don't need to let that person's
Right.
opinion of me become a fact I believe about myself. So if I'm inspiring to people, hey, great. If I inspire you to do more with your life, super. My mission has been served. But I don't get hung up on somebody saying you're so inspirational because you're able to get up and walk around. And I'm like, okay, thank you, and
Right.
I just move on.
Yeah, right. Uh, I mean, it really depends on the individual's perspective, how
Yes,
you
it
see it,
does.
and everybody sees it differently. But I feel like you and I have that in common. Where we want to reach out to people and really make that difference, and in our unique ways. And you said something about your incomplete spinal cord injury.
Yes.
Would you mind sharing with us how that happened?
Yes, actually, it's in a book, but I'll share a little bit with you. It's in my a previous book that's available right now on Amazon called "It Doesn't Define Me: How I Rebuilt My Life After Surviving an Ischemic Stroke to My Spinal Cord." One thing I learned from writing that book: shorter titles are better. But I was going for a lot of SEO. I was born not only visually impaired, I had a constricted aorta, and I had several surgeries on that as a child to correct that problem. In my mid 30s, while I was engaged to my now wife, I had to go in and get corrective surgery again, and it was an ascending to descending aortic bypass. Sometime during the time I climbed up onto the gurney and pre-op, and when I woke up in the CVICU, we do not know exactly what went wrong because hospitals don't like getting sued, but something did go wrong, and I survived my incomplete spinal cord injury while I was either being prepared or during the surgery or shortly afterwards during my ascending to descending aortic bypass.
Wow, and that must have been for you at first. It must have been really hard to deal with, right?
Yes, the way I found out about it because nobody knew, they wake you up in CVICU, or you wake up and they get you off the vent, which took about a day to get off the vent. I never want to be on a ventilator again. That was not fun. And they want to get you up and standing up and taking a few steps to prevent the risk of pneumonia after surgery, which is fine. So they had me sit up on the side of the bed. I slid my legs over the right side of the bed, and I put my feet down on the floor, and I was to stand up. Well, instead of standing up, I hit the linoleum floor hard. And they helped me back in the bed. And we thought, well, he's just tired, weak from everything he'd been through. And we tried it a second time. And the second time we tried it, I went down even faster. And the nurses scurried back to the nurses' station because they knew something was wrong. And a few days later, after an MRI, I was told that I had an incomplete spinal cord injury in the thoracic part of my spine, and I shut down,
Wow.
not completely, but I tuned out the neurologist because the last thing I wanted to hear or was ready to hear was I had a spinal cord injury, because I believed, and I was wrong, but I believed at the time, if you had a spinal cord injury, you don't get any better. And I refused to believe I was not going to get better. So I tuned him out, and it's very hard to accept. In fact, I was still catheterized at the time, and I believed, you know what, they don't know what they're talking about. As soon as they take the catheter out of me, I'll be able to walk, no problem. That didn't happen. And this was in August. And I said, well, as soon as I'll be walking by Labor Day. That didn't happen. But so I did go through some denial after surviving my incomplete spinal cord injury.
Yeah, I've I've had my fair share of things that doctors have said stuff about, you're not gonna walk, read, or write this and that. But you know what? It's you want to make that change. You yourself have to say, I want this. Like you said, I know I'm gonna get better in some way, shape, or form. I'm not gonna get completely better, but I'm gonna get better enough to where I can live life as healthy and as happy as possible.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Totally. Because I was very grateful because my cardiac surgeon who was managing the case, I think he did me a wonderful favor. No one told me what my prognosis was. Nobody told me, well, you probably will not walk again or anything like that. So no one was telling me no, that you can't do these things. I'm very grateful nobody did, because when you hear from a doctor is someone we think is an authority and an expert and knowledgeable and stuff, that could
Right.
have really sacked me. But because I believed and had this belief I would walk again, I may not be able to walk 20 miles like I did before, but I would walk again. uh, and I still believe that. It's given me the strength to come as far as I am. I'm now walking with a rollator, as opposed to initially where I was wheelchair bound all the time. And now I can walk with a rollator, but longer distances, like if I go around Walmart or Target or any store like that, I need to use a scooter because that's just way too much walking for me. But I am able to walk, and I'm very happy about that. And over the years, I've actually been able to take one or two steps without even using a walker in my house, in areas that are safe, that if I start to fall, I can grab onto something, but I can do that as well. So Yeah, just I had the confidence that I could do it. I had a very supportive and understanding fiance slash wife that encouraged me to keep pushing forward, and I continue to keep pushing forward, and I try to get stronger every single day of my life.
And that's fantastic. That's all we should do is just keep on pushing forward and keep on being positive and loving yourself and spreading that love and positivity towards others. It's like what I tell people, what you put out to the kindness you put out to the world, um, it comes back to you, and it's coming back to you in a big way.
Yes, it is. Yeah, you treat people nice, they're going to treat you nice. I know in our community, the disabled community, we have people who will complain about, oh, they did something that was like ableist, like they hold a door open for you. Oh, I could do that myself. And I'm like, I was raised as a kid, you hold doors open for people, that's considered politeness. And so when people, I've had people open up a door for me, and I'm not even going that direction. I look at them and say, thank you very much for opening that door for me, but I'm going that way. So yeah, I'm always polite to them. And because I know that a lot of people, or I've heard of a lot of people in our community who get real snotty about it. I don't need your help. And that's going to discourage people from wanting to be compassionate and helpful. So I always try to be very polite to people who I know in their heart, they're just trying to be helpful, be a good human. And I appreciate that. And I think we all need to show that appreciation, even if we can do things on our own. And so people will help others, especially those who really do need the help, and not cause the non-disabled community to be afraid to help those who really need help.
Right. It's like me. I've been in situations where I don't really need the help, but it always comes, and I appreciate it. Like, give or take 2 weeks ago, I was going to get my hair cut, and I was going down the step, and the person that was holding the door for me, he was looking out for me, making sure I wouldn't like fall forward because the step was a little steep. So he goes from behind and like puts his hands like to the side just
Hmm.
to make sure I wouldn't fall. And I'm like, I was very appreciative of it. Some people are like, don't touch me, don't do anything. But I was like, thank you for at least looking out, because people wouldn't do that. So I definitely appreciated that.
Yeah, and for people who are non-disabled who are watching this, generally you do not want to touch somebody who's physically disabled, because if you touch me while I'm walking, it startles me. It does not offend me, but because it startles me, I
Right.
could lose my balance. So it's really not a great idea to touch somebody who's physically disabled. Also, you don't know if you're touching a
Right.
part of their body that's a pain point for them. But I'm glad that person was helpful to you. But I
Oh
would
yeah.
like to tell the non-disabled community that's not always the best idea, because it
Oh,
can cause
definitely
pain
not.
or cause somebody to get hurt.
Definitely, every person with a disability is different. As far as like what they have could be balance, could be hearing, could be speaking.
Right,
Um, you know, and the main thing is like you're saying, you have to be mindful of that person.
right.
You know, so I definitely agree with you on that one. So with all that being said, what is your like your ultimate goal with this? I know you've written a book, you're working on self-confidence. What are other things you'd like to venture in?
Well, basically, I just would like to venture in. I got a YouTube channel up. I like to get that growing, which I have a lot of videos on it, over 271 videos on there, primarily talking about self confidence or in some of the presentations I've done. I just want to find every way I can to reach out to people with disabilities to have the self confidence to know that they can achieve anything in life. One of the bigger problems we have in our community is employment, traditional employment.
Oh yes, yes.
Unemployment rate for people with disabilities in traditional employment is unacceptably high. And there are many factors. Won't go into all of them, but some of them are discrimination. Some of them are, we live in areas that have non existent public transportation and sketchy or minimal paratransit systems with limited hours. So that
Oh yeah.
limits when we can work. But one area that we do rock in, and one of the leading groups in, is self employment, like
Hmm.
working from home. So much has evolved Unfortunately, there was a lot of death during COVID-19, but so much has evolved in technology like Zoom and other video conferencing software, and working from home became more acceptable and mainstream. And we're now moving into what some would call a gig economy, where you can do freelance work on your own through places like Fiverr and Upwork, etc. And I want to help people with disabilities discover, develop, and grow their self confidence so they can start their own home based business, working from home, working remotely, and so they can feel like they are a productive member in society. Because when I had my incomplete spinal cord injury, my major point that I wanted to make was I wanted to still be a productive member in society. So I grew my
Yes.
eBay business at that time to the point that I got featured in an entrepreneur magazine for my work as a eBayer with a disability. And it can be done. I've done it. I've been working for myself pretty much for the last 30 years, and I want to help other people discover, develop, and grow their self-confidence to say, I can start a business, I can do this, I can make this work, I can be successful, just like my able-bodied peers.
I definitely could attest with you on that. I agree with you on that. I started my public speaking journey 7 years ago now, and I started podcasting around the time when COVID and we had the shutdown. At the time, I was working as an assistant teacher, so I was in the classroom, switching to remote, and working with middle school kids all the time. It was daunting because you had to watch them, you had to make sure they didn't get in trouble, all this and all that, and then having knowing that the school day was like from over here, it's like 9 to 4. After that, I was like, I have all this free time. What am I gonna do? And then I decided to be like, why don't I start a podcast where I talk about my own journey? And then eventually, I'm like, I'm sick and tired of talking about myself. Why not incorporate the rest of the disability community and open it up to where it's a judgment-free zone where you can go on the podcast, share your journey, share your testimony, your story, and you don't have to worry about people judging you because everybody that's going to be watching it are people that actually are like-minded or compassionate about disabilities. And and then motivational speaking, I was like, I started this right when I got off of college. I, people have always told me you have a tremendous story to tell, a tremendous testimony. Why not share it? And at first I was skeptical because I was like, no one's gonna listen to me. I wasn't as confident as I am now.
Mm-hmm.
I was so self-conscious about my own disability. And you know what? After I made that change, I'm like, this is worth it because you're reaching so many people and you're teaching them not just about yourself, but about them too. And that like you mentioned earlier, if we can do what we're doing now, so can you.
Exactly. Yes, totally agree with that.
So where can I know you mentioned Amazon. Where else can they find information about you or inquire about your service, as far as if they need a coach?
Awesome question. Love that question. My website's the best place to go and get that information, and it's in a transition right now. But the URL I'm going to give to you will get you to the current page and to the new site we're building. That's defineyourself.us. DEFINEYOURSELF.us. And that's where you're going to find me. It's going to have links to my YouTube channel, my TikTok, my Facebook, my LinkedIn, and my Instagram. And I'll tell you, folks, you'll find the videos up there. You won't find me there that often. I don't have a lot of time to spend on social media, and I'm not a big fan of social media. But you can find all my videos and other stuff there as well. And I also I have another site called successstartswithselfconfidence.com, which you can go to and get a free cheat sheet with 3 things you can start doing today that to help you discover, develop, and grow your self-confidence.
That is awesome, and I hope everybody can take this link down and get a lot of tools and ways to really build your confidence. And it feels like it doesn't just transcend to somebody with a disability, but everybody can benefit from learning about being
Absolutely.
self-confident, you know?
Absolutely. Yes. The book that will be coming out, self-confidence starts success starts with self-confidence. Got that backwards. Success starts with self-confidence. 10 steps for the self-confident person, successful self-employed person with disability. I don't have it in front of me. I'm still working on that. But basically, even though it's written for persons with disabilities, even if you do not have a disability, the 10 steps will help you become self-confidence. This is the 10 steps I use to discover, develop, and grow my self-confidence over the last 30 years of my life. And I want to share that wisdom with other people so others do not spend 30 years getting to where I'm at, and you can get to a more confident self in much faster time than I did.
Fantastic. I really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope we can expand on it on a different on another episode one day.
Well, I would love to come back and visit with you and your wonderful audience. Thank you for having me tonight.
Definitely. Thank you for taking the time to be on today. And if everybody wants to listen to this podcast, you can go on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, and every other major podcasting outlet out there. And as always, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, a wonderful evening wherever you are, and um, and I hope everybody had a wonderful Valentine's Day week. And with that being said, I hope you all stay safe, stay happy, and stay blessed. Have a good one.